And today I'd like to welcome to the podcast Desirée Dupuis of Voes Company, an ethical, sustainable vegan footwear brand on a mission to pioneer the use of next generation materials and reduce the use of plastic in the vegan fashion industry. Desiree has over 20 years of experience in brand development, storytelling, and all things marketing. She's passionate about living a life of purpose and making an impact in the world by creating permanent, sustainable change. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stefanie LaHart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. So I want to welcome Desiree to the podcast. Desiree and I actually met at the Vegan Women's Summit a couple of weeks ago, and it was so exciting to be around not only business owners and entrepreneurs like her, but just be in that room where all of these people had this shared belief of veganism and ethical and sustainability. It was very exciting, and I know that Desiree and I have had many conversations where we just feel like we could talk for hours, but for the sake of just, making sure we get everything in today, Desiree, just give me real quickly, how did your vegan journey start? How did you get interested in veganism?
Yeah, it started in 2008. I was always interested in nutrition, and a coworker of mine had mentioned that she was no longer putting milk in her coffee. And so I figured I needed to find out why. And she said she had read a book called Skinny Bitch. And so I saw the book Skinny Bitch at the airport when I was on my way to Maui with my best friend. And the book was actually written by two vegans. And so it had a lot of information just about like crap that's in our food in general, like aspartame and things like that. But the heart of the book, which really changed my life, was there was a lot of graphic information about slaughterhouses and the whole process of animal agriculture and how, a piece of chicken, the process that chicken goes through to end up on my plate. And it was the first time in my life that I had ever really considered the process that the animal goes through and what they feel and how they're treated. And it was obviously horrifying. And so yeah, I was lucky enough to be with my best friend at the time, who was also a huge animal lover, and I gave her the book and I went to have a shower. And when I came out, 3 pages in, she was bawling her eyes out, and she actually got sick in the washroom. And since that day, neither of us have eaten meat, haven't worn leather, like basically went to an almost vegan lifestyle, and then followed the journey of, like kind of pescatarian, vegetarian over the course of the last 16 years. But really, when we doubled down and learned about the dairy industry and also the fishing industry and the impact it has on, our oceans and the planet, it is definitely a no-brainer to just completely go plants and be vegan.
Yeah, and that's, you know what, that's a journey that I've heard so similar from so many people, myself included. I was actually introduced to PETA when I was in high school by a very close friend of mine, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And very soon after she'd given me my first magazine, and this, of course, was way back in the day before social media. So literally the only thing I was learning about this was from this one magazine. PETA had a march on Washington, which God bless my parents. They let me go down to that march when I was about 16 or 17.
Wow.
And I just, started learning about all this stuff. And I'm like, I can't eat animals anymore. But I think I told you this before, part of me really wishes that I would have cut out dairy before anything else after I learned the real true atrocities of the dairy industry. It's just so horrific. But, I feel like we're in the perfect time now where we're having these conversations, and God love it. I love social media for this very reason, because we can get so many stories out and so much real information out to people so that they, now know, and there's no reason to make that decision ever again to be like, oh, I didn't know, right? And as I told you before, it's like I'm on an active campaign myself to actually convert people to veganism. I'm very honest about it. And I love meeting people like you because you are not only a serial entrepreneur, you're a social entrepreneur, girl. And I've read a lot about you. I know you have a lot of businesses under your belt. Let's start talking about the business that is so close to your heart right now, where I first met you, which is Voes Company, where you have created this gorgeous designer luxury vegan shoe that is just something that not only people want to wear, it's like something they're asking for. So tell me about what was your journey like in deciding like, I want to launch this product? Because I know you've had experience with products in the past, which we're going to get to. But with this one, what was it specifically that you're like, I have this idea for this shoe and I'm going to make it happen? Like, how did you even know where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, actually, this was my first product because my other businesses that I had before were just service-based businesses. And so I have an entrepreneurial spirit. I consider myself a problem solver. And it was the biggest pain point in my life was trying to find designer footwear, vegan, like obviously I was living a vegan lifestyle. And as a woman who loves shoes, trying to find designer vegan footwear, not made of leather, not made of suede. And then as the climate movement really was picking up, the alternative, as we know, is synthetic plastic, cheap material. And so I was like, there's no option for designer shoes not made of leather, not made of suede, and not made of plastic. And so I figured, well, if no one is doing this, I guess I have to do it myself. And so I had this journey of Voes Company started in 2016 was when I really started to have the idea, and it was like percolating in my mind. And the other thing that was also happening at the time is that I realized and recognized that there is no global iconic brand that represents veganism. There's no like Lululemon or Nike of veganism. And so I thought, well, you know what? We need a brand that I can wear. I don't want to wear like activism. Maybe you might, but like now that you're a vocal activist, but like, I don't want to go to a business meeting or dinner with like, activism type shirts, but I want a brand that I can wear that people can identify like, oh, okay, that person loves animals or they don't eat animals, they love the planet, whatever. And so that's where like the V with my ampersand, the logo came out, was because I had this vision that we need a brand that could represent our values, or at least, yeah, the values that I've had in my heart. And then from there, it's just been, research, trying to find a private label manufacturer. I knew the design that I wanted because the Chelsea boots are something that I wear, 90% of the year, especially being from Vancouver, Canada. And so I had the design already in my mind. I mimicked some nice leather designer boots that friends of mine had and wore all the time. And in 2018 is when a lot of the next generation plant materials started coming out, like Pina Tick, the pineapple leather, and Deserto cactus leather, and apple skin, apple leather. And so then I had the material. I eventually found the private label manufacturer. And now it's so like, it's amazing to be in business in 2024 because everything is so fractional. We can do meetings across the world on the internet, and we have contractual like 3PLs. Like, I don't even have to have a warehouse. I don't even have employee people. I just, everything is in a warehouse, and I get the order. It's automated through my online store. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's not to say that it's easy. It's obviously taken, a lot to like build up. But what I always say to people, it's kind of just like one step at a time. And so here we are with I started with the Chelsea boot in black, and then we launched the white version. And then now we launched our casual sneaker, all made with plant leather, because I'm just creating things that I need in my own life that I wear and need all the time, that I want in my wardrobe, and trying to keep it simple and elegant and luxurious.
Yeah, and I think that's how the best products come about. It's like you create them for yourself. So speaking of the products, didn't you share a story with me recently that you had a supplier in the beginning that kind of suddenly disappeared, maybe over the pandemic, and then you had to find a new one? Am I remembering
Yeah,
that correctly?
yeah. It was our manufacturer. We found a private label manufacturer in Midtown Manhattan. I was super excited about. They made our first prototype. And well, to be honest, what happened is I hired them in January of 2020. I finally found this manufacturer. I finally paid my first invoice for the prototype in January of 2020. They're in Midtown Manhattan, New York. And then, of course, we all know what happened a few weeks later. New York was one of the first places to shut down in February of 2020. And so it for the next year to 2 years of getting my prototype to placing my first 100 pairs of boots to be manufactured by them was like pulling teeth. And by the end of it, the last 25 pairs that I received, they were not made properly. They're unsellable. And so I just like, yeah, I could not continue to build and scale a company with an unreliable partner that A, I couldn't get product from, and B, the product that I did get from was, yeah, unsellable. Like the quality was just not there. And so, yeah, so that's again why it's like, this whole process of taking so much time, because then we then had to find, which I'm proud to say, we now actually have a fully vegan manufacturer that is making our boots and shoes for us. And so, it's a part of entrepreneurship. Again,
Yeah.
it's like when you sign up for it, you don't really understand all the things that you're going to have to overcome. But when the challenge presents itself, it's like, okay, next thing to kind of figure out and overcome. And so, yeah, that's been part of the journey.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to bring it up because frequently we see brands kind of as the final result, like all of these very big, glossy, beautiful brands that are out there, yours included, and you're just like, oh, it's just this perfect product, and you're like, it must have been so easy for them because it's just gorgeous. Like clearly they didn't have any problems, and I really wanted to bring that up because there's so many different hurdles that as entrepreneurs and small business owners we go through that, it takes a while to get to that final product. And it's the people that push through that are willing to keep taking the next step, even when doors are shut in their face or they're not sure of where to go, that they're willing to kind of like, keep asking the questions or asking for help or figuring out the next step that makes them successful. And I say that because I really want to empower the business owners that are out there that no matter what stage you're at, it's like everybody has their problems. And just looking at your beautiful Chelsea shoes, like nobody would know what you went through if I hadn't just mentioned, like, oh, it was easy for her. Look how pretty those shoes are. So easy for the pretty blonde girl over there, right?
Oh yeah,
But
thank you.
that's not how anybody's life goes. And I appreciate that you took the time, effort, and had the grit to keep going because it's hard. And I loved, first of all, I did read that on your Instagram where you mentioned like the factory is now fully vegan. So thank you for putting that out there. That's just another beautiful part of your story. Also, kudos to you for making that part of your Instagram reel because when I'm working with my clients, they're always like, I don't know what to put on Instagram. And that's like exactly the thing. It's like, tell them how you make the product, like the secret sauce or like what's going on here in your business. Your customers want to know that stuff. And I also love that I've read that, you're really into this next generation materials. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that next generation materials means, just to kind of educate people that are out there? Because I didn't know, honestly, until I read so much of your Instagram. Like your Instagram has taught me so much.
Wow, I'm so glad to hear that because I feel like it is with any business, it's always a struggle of what content to put out there and what's actually valuable and what's reaching people. But yeah, next generation material essentially is this new innovation in vegan materials because the whole intention of my brand really is to reduce plastic in the vegan fashion industry. So it's next generation. It's like way ahead because now not only, are we moving towards ethical material like animal free, but we're also now with the environmental footprint trying to reduce petroleum and plastic. And so next generation essentially is, all of those materials that I mentioned that are based primarily made with plants. So like the cactus leather, the pineapple leather, all the fruit leathers, but there's also now, and those still do contain some, biopolymers. They do have a plastic element to them, but we're like as pretty much as far on the edge of, the future innovations as we can get. But beyond that, there are even some companies like Uncaged Innovations and material from natural fibers welding called Mirum, which are actually 100% completely plastic free. And they're making them with agricultural waste and different types of rubbers and different things like that. And so, yeah, it's the next generation is the innovation of materials that are the future and becoming totally plastic free
Yeah, in
and
fact,
vegan,
I
of
think
course.
I think in one of your posts you actually said think less plastic and more plants. And I love that as a tagline. I think you should trademark it. That's the best thing I've ever heard. And that, it's funny to me. I feel like when plastic was created, I think it was when was plastic created? Probably back in the 40s, maybe. I
Yeah.
feel like it was kind of like our slow march towards world destruction because we had all these sudden conveniences and ways of doing things. And oh, you didn't think everything was disposable as over the years. And now we're like, oh, well, that actually ends up being a really bad thing. The fact that you could
Yeah.
just throw single-use plastics make me insane. I mean, I am one of those people that carries their water bottle with them everywhere. I'm like, I cannot imagine buying a plastic bottle of water at this point. And I wish more people felt that way, but I'm willing to take my win, like I said, on the veganism side. I will share, I've had the joy of helping many of my friends see, the path of veganism. It is a passion of like just, making sure people have the information and then being like, why are you not following this? But I mention all that because when we're thinking about products and market research, we have to figure out what people want and specifically what they're going to respond to, right? So I know you mentioned a little while back that, you created a shoe that you would want. Did you have to do any kind of market research when you were first deciding, hey, I want to do this shoe? And like, how did you decide on like what's your target market? And maybe do you want to tell me a little bit about who you consider your target market for this shoe? Again, it's designer. It's not cheap. You're not getting it pay less prices. Like, who's your person? So, first, like, did you do any market research? And then who do you consider your target market now?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the research that I done was primarily just myself and the like-minded, maybe not vegan people, but people that were starting to really care about climate, like just feeling the weight of the world and feeling like we're not very empowered to feel like our choices matter. And so I mean, I didn't do it, to be honest, like I didn't have the money to pay for like Nielsen research or huge market research. So it was just kind of like word of mouth and also watching the journey that I was on. So I had been vegan for 8 years before I really like started to double down on Voes and Company and creating this business. So I think a lot of the market research I had was just watching the industry, paying attention to what was going on, and also the fashion industry. And like I said, like I really wanted to create a timeless, evergreen type of product. So I'm not building shoes based on trends or things that are going to be in and out of fashion. Like a Chelsea boot is like, has been around since probably, at least the 40s. I think the 20s is when the Chelsea boot originated. And so, creating and the design was mimicked after just, yeah, like I said earlier, some like really famous leather boot companies that I wanted that I'd already like very famous, very popular. The only research I really did was on Blundstone because everybody in Vancouver, Canada, I shouldn't use words like everybody, but a lot of people in Vancouver, BC, Canada have Blundstones, and Blundstones are a very, very popular type of Chelsea boot or shoe. And I never owned a pair because they're obviously made from animals. And so I said, what is the deal with Blundstones? Like, why does everyone have one? And and when I finally tried a pair on, I realized, oh, okay, these are like remarkably comfortable. And so I realized like comfort is king, first of all, and then you need, style and fashion. And they have to be the other gripe I had with not just that it's the vegan shoes are made with plastic, but the plastic is not comfortable, it's not breathable. And a lot of times if it's not quality, it will start to fall apart. So those were kind of like the standard items in the QA part of it that I really wanted to make sure my boots would provide. But the seam up the middle was actually also because we weren't using real leather. We were using like plant leather, next generation material. And so the way that the leather comes and the way that we're able to press it together with heat and things like that, we had to do a seam up the middle for functionality purposes. So that wasn't a design choice and that wasn't based on any research. And I can't remember what your second question was about the market
My second
research.
question was, who do you consider your target market now?
Oh, right. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, our target market is, like a general span is 25 to 45-year-old women who would identify primarily as plant-based or eco-conscious, environmentalists that are, I wouldn't even say they're like necessarily fashionistas, but, like care and consider about what they wear. They're into health and wellness. And again, like mindful, conscious consumers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that the Brooklyn sneakers you consider gender neutral. What about the Chelsea boot? I mean,
Yeah, we
are
do have some men wearing the Chelsea boot for
yeah.
sure. And I'm actually working on getting we have a customer who wants a size 13 in the Chelsea boot. So I'm trying to figure out if we can get that made for him. But they are a bit of a more like feminine look. So we do want to do a bit more of like a gender neutral Chelsea boot, which, and even a lot of women don't always want that pointy, toe. And so we are looking eventually at making like a more of a rounded toe that can be more gender neutral. And yeah, the sneakers are gender neutral. I mean, our target market isn't men just because we don't have products and inventory to sell necessarily at this point. But that doesn't say that we don't sell to men. Of course, we have lots of men actually buying our sneaker, and some that have bought the Chelsea boot as well.
Well, I'm going to make a little confession to you and to all of our listeners right now. When I met you at the Vegan Women's Summit, I was doing my own thing. I was running around interviewing people. I did the interview with you. I looked at the boots. I'm like, oh, these are cute. But I live in LA. And I thought, I don't really wear boots that much, honestly. I mean, I'm wearing a lot of sandals and all. And I have regretted every single day since the day I met you that I did not buy those boots in white immediately, because it was almost like I needed to see them in action, in person, for me to visualize them in my life. I have literally put on so many outfits in the last 30 days. I'm like, those boots would have been perfect. I have no shoes to wear. And I'm like, I have to now order them online. And I didn't even try them on that day. I'm so mad at myself. And here you literally created the perfect boot, because every time I look at my closet, I'm like, those boots would look great with that outfit, with a dress, with pants, with shorts. And I didn't buy them. And I'm so mad at myself. So the next order you see is going to be Stefanie LaHart in West Hollywood, because I'm obsessed with the white boots, and I never wear white boots.
Oh,
So
I'm
you
glad.
created
Well,
a level of FOMO in me that I didn't know was possible.
there you go. I think we can get you sorted. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was the goal, Like I said, like I'm a minimalist. We're probably not going to get into this, but right now I've been living the last 2 years out of my carry-on. And I just went to Italy, and all I brought was my white boots and my white sneakers. And so for me, it's like very, very important to have a versatile boot that is ultra comfortable. And that is the one thing I will say about our boots. They seem to fit everybody, whether you have wide, narrow, or normal feet. They fit, and they're pretty standard sizing. You can size down if you do have narrow feet like me, because they fit smaller with the pointy toe, but they fit from day one, no blisters, no having to work them in for a month or 3 weeks. Like, they're ready to go and take you everywhere on any adventure you need to go. So we will definitely get you sorted with a white pair
Thank
of
you.
style Chelsea boots.
Yeah, like I said, it's just been one of those moments in my life when I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. I should have. And when we talked the other day, you said, yeah, you made a lot of sales that day. I'm like, yeah, and one of them wasn't me, because I was too busy with my interviews and all this stuff and thinking I'm in LA, I would never wear a boot. And now I can't stop thinking about them. So I will be ordering them. I'm very excited about getting them at some point. Let me ask you quickly, before we segue a little bit more into your charity work, what's your definition of success, girl?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, I think ultimately the definition of success for anybody should be what makes them happy, and if you feel happy and fulfilled. And I think it goes back to, when I read the seven habits of highly effective people, it through reading that book, I ended up doing my own personal mission statement and identifying my own personal values. And to me, what I identified as my number one value is freedom. And so for me, what I define success is my level of freedom that I feel. And I feel very free. I mentioned that I am like living home free at the moment out of a carry-on. And so to me, success is being able to do for myself. And I think that everybody needs to take I think it's there is no blanket definition of success. I'm someone that was raised, I'm 40, I'll be 45 on Friday. So I was somebody that was raised with the mindset that basically success is the equivalent of your bank account, or how much money you make, what kind of car you drive, all of these, external factors. And more, thankfully, this whole movement around inner peace and like the internal check marks, and so again, I wouldn't say there's a blanket definition. For me, success is my level of freedom and the level of happiness I feel, and my happiness is directly related to how aligned my life is with my values.
I totally agree with everything you said. And I'm glad you brought up that book, because I know that I read a lot of other interviews, like I said, where you had referenced that book. So of course, know what I did. I just put that book on hold at the library. I'm like, I have to read this book because you mentioned it so much. So I'm going to give you a book recommendation in return. I just finished a book called The Gap and the Gain. Have you read this one?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Oh my God, Desiree literally changed my entire way of thinking about how it's a very simple concept. Like, you can either focus on what are your wins for the day, like what kind of went right in the day,
or you focus on what went wrong or where you feel like you're so far from your goal or whatever. That's your gap, obviously. But it really pointed out to me how much I had been focusing on the gaps in my life instead of the gains. Like I'd had so many gains, like going to the Vegan Women's Summit and meeting all these great business owners like you, total like gain, right? But I was focused more on the gap. Well, oh, well, I didn't book everybody for my podcast, or I didn't book enough sales meetings, or I didn't do whatever. Instead, be like, no, I like just connected with this awesome community. So I really like that the book made me reframe so many of my recent experiences. So I'll give that one to you as a suggestion, The Gap and the Gain. You can look it up. I found it very helpful because I will be reading your recommendation, The 7 Highly Effective Habits of People. What is that? 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that'll be my read. So I'm glad that we're like trading ideas right here. Speaking of trading ideas, let me just touch back a little bit. So before Voes and Company, you had another business that you had been running for a couple of years called Cove, right? Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, Cove actually came in the middle. So I alluded to it earlier, but I had when I was 28, I kind of left my full-time job and started embarking on this like self-employment entrepreneurial journey. And so from 2008 to about 2018, well, exactly for 10 years, I ran and operated a insurance-based financial company. And when we sold that company in 2018, the only thing I was doing at that time was actually running the Ruben Shoe Society, which is another whole long story, but it was like this organic charity that we ended up building, me and my best friend, to help support education for impoverished children in the Dominican Republic. And it started as a shoe collection because kids in countries like the Dominican, they can't go to school unless they have shoes. So my best friend started a shoe project to collect. She had met a boy that she had been sponsoring named Ruben. So we collected some shoes and et cetera, et cetera. Over 5 years, we were running that. So after we sold our insurance business in 2018, I was focused on Ruben shoes, but I was kind of in this like vague state because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was starting to have the like Voes Co was like starting to like it was still before we had the materials and things like that. So it still wasn't really like it is like really like incubator stage, right? And so but 2020, as I mentioned, was the year that I had decided to start focusing on Voes Co. But then a few weeks after I decided to make that my like main full-time job, there was no way for me to move forward because the factory had shut down and it was COVID. And so it was actually in the spring of 2020, summer of 2020, I was invited to join as a founding partner in a seaweed farming company with the intention to launch a food product made from the seaweed that we were growing all around Vancouver Island in partnership with Indigenous First Nations. And so that's how Cove became. So I spent the next 2.5 years from the spring of 2020 working on developing the tastiest, most delicious food recipes that we could with locally grown seaweed and launching a CPG food brand, which ultimately became Cove. And long story short, after that 2.5 years, I actually ended up taking over full ownership of the brand. And so we like spun off from the seaweed farming company. And then I took over full ownership as founder of the brand and then brought in some new partners to help me scale and grow in the food industry, new partners that had experience in the food industry at companies like Smart Sweets and Vega, some of the biggest Vancouver food companies here in Vancouver. And so, yeah, so I'm obviously, the founder, significant partner in Cove Ocean Foods. And right now we have our main ingredient, which is our main product, our hero product, which is sea spice, which is basically like an everything but the bagel seasoning made with kelp, locally grown seaweed, garlic, onion, and it's like an amazing topper on avocado toast or even popcorn. And yeah, just this delicious seasoning made with seaweed.
Yeah. And I love what you mentioned too about, it was very important for you to not only be sustainable, but also to make sure that you were being respectful of the environment and the people around, which is, incredibly important too, because we've seen it so much. I keep saying in recent years, but I think throughout time where something gets popular, let's say like coconut milk, and then it suddenly becomes this very exploitative, industry where the level of cruelty now, you've probably heard the stories of like these slave monkeys that they have that are picking these coconuts for various companies and things like that, and then also depleting the land. And I think that we all have to be really aware of that and conscious of the fact that it's like, yes, you want to build a brand and a business and a product, but it can't be to the detriment of everything around it. You know, it can't suddenly be, you know, ruining the environment, ruining people's livelihoods, taking away from, like you said, the indigenous cultures that were there, you know, and suddenly becoming another, you know, way to torture animals, you know. And I just think a lot of times people focus so much on the profits of stuff that they, you know, take an idea and it just becomes something that you're like, oh, wow, kind of like the nuclear bomb. We wish that didn't happen, right? We heard the same
Yeah.
story with quinoa, where suddenly quinoa was the thing. It's like, hey, it's actually bad. We're doing pretty bad things to the environment, to the people, and to the thing, you know, and to the ground. And now we have this whole movement of regenerative farming and things like that. And I think that's just important to bring up because, you know, as business owners, obviously, people are in business to make money. We have to survive. That's how our world works. It's a, you know, a commerce-based world, but not everything has to be to the detriment of like, I need to make $1 million or I'm not a success, which is actually why I asked you what's your definition of success, because people are now realizing that it's okay to be like, I don't need to be a millionaire. It's okay to say, I don't have to be a millionaire, but I do want to have something that I'm excited about and that I'm passionate about. And that also exist in this world, not to the detriment of everything else. So I'm glad that, you know, you brought that up with Cove, because that's also very important. It's not just, you know, profit, profit, profit.
No, 100%. And that's why when the opportunity came for me and then when I learned about seaweed and how it is a superfood for the planet, you know, it is regenerative farming. I'm glad you brought that up. So at this point, it's like we are way far away from over polluting our oceans with seaweed. Like there, it's like almost going to be impossible for us to do. Like in fact, the more seaweed and what Cascadia Seaweed was doing, the seaweed farming companies, they're actually building seaweed farms, which means they're planting kelp in the ocean. And the more kelp that gets planted, the more it's sequestering carbon, the more it's like feeding ocean life, the more it's actually cleaning, helping to clean the oceans. And so by planting and growing seaweed, it has this like abundant factor of helping the planet. And then of course, as we take it out of the ocean to turn it into food, it is a sustainable regenerative food source that's highly nutritious, obviously vegan, and the way that we're able to do it in respect with indigenous people, because they've been eating seaweed for a millennium. So it's like, let's do it in partnership with them. If they own the land, then we can create economic opportunities for them and their people as well. But I think you nailed it. Like it's like the consumerism mentality and culture in our Western society is out of control. And so everything will have a negative detrimental impact once it's like starts to go off like that hockey stick and, you know, reaches a point of scale, which is again why, you know, mindful consumerism is so important. And like even when I was on another conversation, I was talking about Cove, and we used to have like our snacks, and our snacks were more expensive than, let's say, Lay's potato chips. But it's like, okay, well, maybe I will buy one snack of seaweed puffs, you know, or one bag of seaweed puffs once or twice a week versus like one bag every single day. It's like doing less, being more mindful, and like buy a pair of boots, but maybe buy one that will take you through summer and winter, you know what I mean? Rather than 6 different types of boots. And like for me, my goal is not, I don't want to be sitting on an empire of like money and real estate that I own. Like my goal with my company is like, of course, I'm going to, you know, like take care of myself in my life and be able to pay for my freedom. But beyond that, my ultimate goal is to invest everything I make into helping animals, building my own animal sanctuary, helping other sanctuaries, like giving. I want to give, like I want to be known for like giving the most money away. Like that's kind of like my motto.
I've always wanted to be Oprah. That's my lifelong dream, to be
Yeah,
Oprah, just
same.
to give money away.
Same. Or Taylor
But
Swift. Like she goes
yeah.
she like creates her own economy. Like she gives so much away on her tour. It's insane.
Yeah, I suggested that actually to somebody else who I don't even think they own their own brand or something, where I said, you know, we don't have to buy so much stuff. Like you can buy one pair of shoes and then not buy another one for 10 years. And they're like, well, no, that's not good for a business owner. That's bad business because you want them to keep buying. And I'm like, no, that's what we've been taught now. But, you know, there were not in the very distant, you know, past, it was like, okay, so I live in West Hollywood, and if you go around to any of these very old like building structures that were built in like the 20s or 40s, they have tiny closets, tiny, because
Mhm.
people didn't have so much stuff. You didn't have a closet full of like 60 dresses. You had 3 dresses that you would rotate through and wash. And now we're like, have been just, conditioned to think, oh no, I can't wear the same 3 dresses. And that's us. Like, we've made ourselves think that. That's not how it was. Like I said, just about 60 years ago. And you might have even seen this in
the industry
Vancouver.
has done that. Yeah.
It was like, but they're tiny closets because people didn't have that much stuff. And I'm going to fully admit, I do have a closet packed full of stuff. I haven't got myself into the minimalist, lifestyle, because now I'm also, a little paralyzed because now I have so much stuff. What do I do with it all? Like, how do I get rid of it, ethically?
Yeah. Clothing swap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I still have some leather products that I look at and I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. So, that's kind of a conversation that I'm trying to like figure out with people. Like, what do you do once you've realized kind of what your lifestyle was? Like, how do you move forward? But maybe that's a conversation for a different podcast. I know we've been talking for a little while, and just for the sake of time, I just wanted to kind of tie this up because I found a really great quote from you that I wanted to read because I think it's your mission statement that I'm reading here. And I kind of want to end with this, where you said, your purpose is to advocate for kind, compassionate, conscious living through ethically sourced, sustainable, 100% vegan, plant-based designer footwear. That's a mouthful, but that's kind of what I want to see on a t-shirt, because I would walk around with that. I mean, our mission is, as humans in this world now, is to figure out how to make sure this planet is here for many more generations of humans and animals, right? You can agree with me on that, right?
Yeah, 1000%. Yeah.
Okay, so here's your big question, and I didn't prep you for this because I just wanted to get like a really honest kind of like not too much thought into an answer, okay? And you can only choose one. If you could choose one thing to change in the world right now, and it can only be one thing, it can't be like, I'm going to wish for a million wishes for more wishes. One thing in the world to change right now, what would you change?
And animal agriculture.
Oof, girl, you nailed that. That was pretty quick. So, animal agriculture, right?
Yeah,
I love it.
We find, I think lots of people have said it. If we change the way we treat animals, we change the way we treat ourselves, and that everything will fall from there. Like,
I totally agree with that.
I can see from ending animal agriculture, we end war, we end famine, we end everything to become this like, heavenly, peaceful world that we can be. So I think it starts there.
Oh, and one other thing I totally forgot from the beginning of our conversation. Where did the name Voes Company come from?
Yeah, well, it's my like little secret, but I guess I could share. It's so easy when I say it. It's the V for vegan and then OES from shoes.
Oh, wow.
I
like
get that question every day. And it's also like, now I've turned it into an acronym, which is, vegan, organic, ethical, sustainable. But originally it's just, vegan shoes.
Yeah, like I said, when I first met you, I could tell you had a background in marketing, because everything from your booth to just your presentation to everything was just so beautifully done. It really made me want to learn more about what was going on there. Again, I apologize. And I'm mad at myself for not buying the shoes. I am, as soon as I get off this podcast interview with you, I will be buying my shoes. But why don't you tell everyone where they can find you very easily, where they can get your shoes, where they can, follow you on Instagram, just so that they can become as, obsessed with Voes Company as I am.
Yay. Well, thank you for being such an ambassador. Yeah, I mean, it's just, voesandcompany.com, VOES and company.com. You'll see our collection on there. If you're on Insta, then it's at Voes, VOES _and co. And yeah, join us. I mean, we're on a mission. We can't do this alone. So even if you don't, or you're not in the market for Chelsea boots right now or a sneaker, then please join us, join our email community. I'm always sharing my journey, the good, the bad, the ups and the downs, and special offers like our insider VIP. They got the first dibs at the sneaker. They got the I won't even share the price that they got some of those sneakers at, because it's only for our insiders, but they got a very, 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 very good smoking deal on the launch, because they're in my community. Some of them have started with our Kickstarter campaign in 2020, and so they get treated very, very well. So join us.
Yeah. I will advise everyone immediately sign up for your newsletter. I really enjoy reading it. You have such great stories in there. It goes way beyond just simply buy my shoes. I think you've really nailed it with like having a really engaging and interesting newsletter to read. So anybody listening out there, make sure you sign up for that. Get yourself into the Voes world. You said not everybody's in the market for Chelsea boots. I'm going to take that back from you because I'm telling you right now, girl, since I saw them, everything in my closet is a Chelsea boot outfit. So, and white, I'm not even like a white shoe girl. And now I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe because I saw you twirling around in Italy in them. I think that was it. So, all right. Thank you. Listen, Desiree, thank you so much for such an awesome conversation. I am really, really glad that we got to meet. I feel like we're going to be friends forever. And, I can't wait to follow you on your journey just to see how the company develops, all the great things you do. It is people like you that are really changing the world for good and for my heart and the hearts of animals all over the planet. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Have an awesome day. And I will see you guys in the next podcast episode because wait till you see who we have on next.
Thanks, Stefanie.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.